All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hi, I'm Chris Gross here, Head of Marketing and Clinical Education here at Johnson Compounding and Birds Hill Compounding. I am so thrilled to introduce Tanya, a registered pharmacist with over 25 years of experience in compounding. Many of you know her well, and specializes in women's health and bioidentical hormone therapy, which we're so excited to hear more about tonight. And Tanya has designed our comprehensive women's health programs and is deeply committed to making sure every woman feels heard and supported through perimenopause and menopause. We are so happy to have her on our team, and I know we'll all have a great time tonight learning some more about it. So I have everybody on mute. We have a chat section that I will review throughout the night. We'll try to get to every question we can at the end, and we have a special surprise as well. So without further ado, if I missed anything, let me know, Tanya, but the floor is yours and we're so pumped for this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thanks everyone for
Yep.
attending. We don't see anything without these. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. We're gonna do the, webinar portion first, and then we're gonna do the QA afterwards. So let's get started. Let's see. So if you yourself have not felt this way, you probably know someone who has. Menopausal women can seem full of complaints. The reason being is that menopause and even perimenopause is life-changing, and it's not always fun or understood. It's not just the symptoms like anxiety or sleeplessness and hot flashes. It's a rapid aging with bone loss and memory loss and cardiovascular disease. So you all know the basic definitions of menopause. What's important to get out of this is that it's just as important to treat perimenopause as it is to treat menopause. Perimenopause, meaning the time around menopause, is the period of time that varies from women to women. It can come with menstrual irregularities. It can come with a wide variety of symptoms. It typically starts about late 30s, early 40s with a decline in progesterone. And this decline in progesterone not only can cause a multitude of symptoms like a lot of the emotional ones, irritability, mood, anxiety, not sleeping, night sweats, hair loss, all those are related to this decline in progesterone. But it creates also an imbalance with the estrogen that you have. So that can be more of an estrogen dominance where it could cause things like breast tenderness, weight gain, heavier periods. Our androgens like DHEA, which is a precursor hormone, and testosterone, those tend to be elevated in perimenopause and then later decline with estrogen in early menopause. I'm going to try and read this. This was written in it's a book from 1869 discussing menopause, essentially. It says, after a certain number of years, woman lays aside those functions with which she has been endowed for the perpetuation of the species and resumes once more that exclusively individual life which has been hers when a child. The evening of her days approaches, and if she has observed the precepts of wisdom, she may look forward to a long and placid period of rest, blessed with health, honored and loved with a pure flame, that which any she inspired in the bloom of youth and beauty. Except that the life expectancy in 1869 was 43 years old. So I don't think she got to relish in any of menopause. Let's see. And this here, so menopause used to be treated with things like herbal preparations, belladonna, cannabis, which I think is actually coming back. I think there's quite a few people using that for sleeping issues, and opium. And in the 1890s, there was Overin, which was made from desiccating and pulverizing cow ovaries. Estrogen was isolated in 1930s, and in 1942, Premarin was produced by Ayerst. And then Prempro, which is a combination of Premarin and a synthetic progestin, Provera, eventually became the most widely prescribed drug in the US. This I found was an ad that they used to call Keep Her on Premarin campaign ad. The physician who puts a woman on Premarin when she is suffering from the menopause usually makes her life pleasant to live, makes her pleasant to live with once again. It is no easy thing for a man to take the stings and barbs of business life than to come home to the turmoil of a woman going through the change of life, if she is not on Premarin, that is. And then I found another one from that ad. In a sense, when you are prescribed Premarin for a wife and mother who is suffering in the menopause, chances are you are treating the whole family, junior, sis, and dad, just like mom can tell the difference. And even though the ads may seem a little tasteless in ways, there's some truth to it. So many women will, complain to me that these hormone imbalances and all these emotional changes that they're experiencing also affect, their friends and family and coworkers. So, hormones and aging. These are the diseases associated with aging, and in turn associated with low hormone levels. It's not always the fall, that broke their hip, but it's the break that actually made them fall. So, for example, osteoporosis, which literally means porous bones, affects over 8 million women, with an additional 27 million in the osteopenia stage. And while different pharmaceuticals have their place, they come with dangerous side effects like GI toxicity, osteonecrosis of the jaw, femur fractures, and osteoporosis is a preventable disease. It takes more than vitamin D and calcium, but it is preventable. Keeping your hormones at optimal level is preventative care. And optimal estrogen levels, along with testosterone, and even adding some light weightlifting, can actually build backbone. So, as medical research advances, the idea that hormones cause cancer diminishes. There's some data that shows a link with synthetic hormones. One of estrogen's functions is cell division or proliferation. So, if cancer cells are already present, estrogen could speed up that process. So, it's important to balance or oppose estrogen with natural progesterone. If a woman has a hysterectomy, traditional medicine would only give her estrogen and not progesterone, with the idea that progesterone is only needed to protect the uterine lining or endometrium. But progesterone is needed to balance estrogen, and there are receptor sites all over the body for progesterone, not just in the uterus and ovaries. So they're present in the brain, the lungs, skin, eyes, bone, breast, letting you know that that organ is dependent on progesterone's presence. There was the French cohort study. Women in that study were using bioidentical estradiol and progesterone. It says, we are unable to detect an increase in the relative risk of breast cancer in the HRT user. Excuse me. These results do not justify early interruption of such HRT, which is beneficial for quality of life, prevention of bone loss, and cardiovascular risk profile. Here's another one. The majority of perimenopausal women are not treated for low progesterone levels. They're usually offered synthetic birth control methods, which actually lower natural progesterone, or they're given medications to help ease or mask symptoms like anti-anxiety meds or antidepressants. And since perimenopause typically lasts 10 to 15 years for most women, it's important to balance that estrogen. And you can only do that with natural or bioidentical progesterone. So in the slide, they determined that women in the progesterone deficiency group had 5.4 times the risk of premenopausal breast cancer compared to the women in the normal hormone level. And then women in the progesterone deficiency group also experienced a 10-fold increase in deaths from all malignant neoplasms compared to the normal hormone group. So here's another one. Atherosclerosis is when fatty substances form a deposit of plaque on the lining of the arterial walls. It's also known as hardening of the arteries. In this study, estrogen effects on arteries vary with stage of reproductive life and extent of atherosclerosis progression. It noted that coronary heart disease remains the leading cause of death among postmenopausal women. So for the perimenopausal and early postmenopausal years, there is definite benefit from estrogen. Monkeys were given estrogens immediately after surgical menopause and had a 70% inhibition of coronary atherosclerosis progression. Estrogen treatment prevented progression of atherosclerosis in women in that study. And a meta-analysis of women younger than 60 given hormone therapy had reduced total mortality. This is from aromatase inhibitors, A Time for Reflection. It says, we have come to appreciate that estrogen plays a critical role in multiple systems. The loss of estrogen at the time of menopause is associated with an accelerated loss of bone. Also, there is an accelerated progression of atherosclerosis. A woman who becomes menopausal before age 45 is up to 7 times more likely to experience a cardiovascular event. So the idea is not to withhold or block estrogen. If estradiol is initiated within 10 years of menopause, there's a 60% reduction in coronary calcification, a 50% reduction in cardiovascular events, and 35% reduction in overall mortality, including cancer. Estrogen deprivation causes changes in the central nervous system, affecting balance, mood, and cognitive function. 62% of perimenopausal women report memory and attentional impairment, which I think we can all account to that. Another great concern is the accelerated expression of neurodegenerative disease such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So with Alzheimer's, they did a Cache County study, which was published in JAMA, and the women who took estrogen, 90% of them from menopause on, taking a good dose of estrogen for longer than 10 years, will not develop Alzheimer's. It's a really terrible disease, and women should definitely not be starved of estrogen. So, memory loss, dementia is another result of declining hormones and another reason to keep them balanced. So estrogen protects against cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, colorectal cancer, eye disease, oral gum disease, and then has effects on the vaginal area and bladder as well. There's a lot of receptor sites for estrogen on the bladder. For osteoporosis-related hip fractures, 50% of people will die in 2 years. Without surgery, mortality can reach 70% within 1 year if the hip fracture isn't surgically repaired. Long-term impact, a 12-year study found that mortality rates doubled for those with a hip fracture compared to their matched peers without one. And there was a 3-month risk spike. Older adults face 5 to 8 times higher risk of death in the first 3 months post-fracture. And again, it's a preventable disease. Medical organizations like ACOG and NAMS only recently updated their hormone recommendations. It was always use the smallest dose of estrogen for the shortest period of time. Why? I don't know. The eyes, macular degeneration is actually an estrogen-related disease. Women not given estrogen, so then they trip over the dog and then have a hip fracture and die sooner, doesn't make any sense. There's actually a 75% reduction in macular degeneration in women taking estrogen. So we all know some of the more common symptoms associated with low hormone levels, hot flashes, night sweats, but there's a lot of symptoms that maybe sometimes people don't realize are hormone related or could be hormone related, like headaches, palpitations, anxiety, itchiness. You can read, some of them here. Weird dreams, skin feeling crawly. I hear all the time women just saying, you don't feel comfortable in your own skin. So that's definitely could be related to hormone imbalance. Yeah, so each symptom can be related to whether a hormone is high or low. So it's pretty common to make adjustments to hormone therapy based on symptoms. Getting that initial lab work done is really important, but adjusting the formula can be done, through conversation, very common, and getting an idea of what's going on and what hasn't been resolved yet, and adjusting the hormones based on, the common symptoms associated with that hormone. And estrogen has over 400 functions. So you can imagine what's not getting done when your levels are so low, or especially if they're low for a long period of time. So estrogen plays an important role in many systems. Cardiovascularly, estrogen, which is best delivered topically, can lower triglyceride levels, reduce LDL, normalize clotting. Estradiol is actually one of our body's anti-clotting substances. It has everything to do with what makes us women, from the quality of our skin right down to the cellular level. Your body's estrogen has been shown to, increase metabolic rate, decrease blood pressure, decrease LDL. You can read these here. Increase HDL by 10 to 15%, reduce overall risk of heart disease by 40 to 50%. It just really lets you know how important estrogen is to us. The list continues. Topical estrogen, using it topically avoids the first pass metabolism, which means going through the liver and being processed. Can also lower C-reactive protein to help avoid putting women at risk for a cardiovascular event and lower the risk of venous thromboembolism. Estrogen decreases the risk of colon cancer. And of course, decreasing wrinkles isn't a bad thing either. We actually compound, an estrogen cosmetic cream because it's been shown to decrease pore size, improve skin elasticity, decrease fine lines and wrinkles. It works the same way really with the vaginal area too. It's a needed hormone. Poor Millie. Her hot flashes are lethal if you're made of snow. And we have 3 naturally occurring estrogens in our body. We have estrone, estradiol, and estriol. So estrone is considered to be a more negative estrogen. Your body actually continues to make it postmenopausally. Premarin is made up mostly of estrone and in vastly different proportions than our own. It actually has 12 metabolites that don't even exist in a human female. This particular hormone, estrone, is typically omitted from bioidentical hormone therapy in most cases. Then there's estradiol. This is your main estrogen. It's a potent estrogen. It's what provides all the protective effects for bone, heart, brain. And then you can read on the slide again about the effects that, estradiol has on the heart, your cholesterol levels. Then we have estriol, and estriol is considered to be a really good, a very positive estrogen. It's most prevalent during pregnancy. It's a relatively weak estrogen, and it's reserved for combined therapy, usually, or alone in a topical or vaginal product for dryness, atrophy, even bladder issues. Recurrent UTIs or infections can also be treated with estriol. And estriol is a little known hormone in traditional medicine. So, back in the day when I probably started out on this, 25 years ago, there was to be trias, which was a combination of the 3 hormones. Now it's really more bias, which means bias to estrogens, made up of estradiol and estriol, usually either an 80-20 split or even a 50-50 split. So this is progesterone. Equally as important. It's an ancient hormone. Natural progesterone is nothing like synthetic progestins. can't be confused or compared to. They don't have the same actions in our body. Estrogen was originally given alone, and they found that it was leading to uterine cancer. So synthetic progestins were created because the natural compound couldn't be patented. So synthetic progestins are in products like Provera, which is medroxyprogesterone, IUDs, like the Mirena IUD has synthetic progestin, birth control pills, menopausal products like Activella are synthetic progestins. If it doesn't say progesterone, it's certainly not bioidentical. And then you can see here are some effects that you see with natural or bioidentical progesterone that you don't see with synthetic progestins. To say hormone replacement when using synthetic hormones is actually quite inaccurate because we don't start out with those hormones in the first place. The body lacks the infrastructure to safely and efficiently metabolize non-human hormones without producing toxic byproducts. So with natural progesterone, you can see it helps balance estrogen, may protect against breast cancer, improves sleep, increases metabolic rate. It's a natural diuretic and antidepressant. These are side effects of progestins. Synthetic hormones can actually work against you. Synthetic progestins inhibit your body's ability to produce its own natural progesterone. I see this with saliva testing. When women use birth control pills or have the Mirena IUD, their progesterone levels will be automatically low with those synthetic progestins there. And they don't just have a lot of side effects, but they can have negative cardiac effects too. Like on this slide, you can see can cause spasm of coronary arteries, stops the protective effects of estrogen on the heart, increases LDL, decreases HDL. So natural progesterone improves cholesterol levels, unlike the synthetics. It is also safe on the liver, unlike medroxyprogesterone. Bioidentical progesterone has antihypertensive action, and with estrogen prevents coronary vasospasm. Natural progesterone improves sleep, whereas medroxyprogesterone can cause insomnia, depression, and anxiety. Bioidentical progesterone will stimulate osteoblasts, where the synthetic may decrease bone density as much as 5 to 6%. And actually, women tend to just feel a lot better on natural progesterone. So the premise of bioidentical hormone therapy is really simple. It's just copy nature, give the body exactly what it needs to get the systems back in order. No more, no less. If your doctor told that you needed thyroid or insulin hormones, there'd be no question. And the same thing applies for our sex hormones. This is DHEA. So DHEA is dihydroepiandrosterone. It was, used to be referred to as a fountain of youth. And if you Google it, it seems like the greatest thing. In reality, it's an important precursor to the sex hormones. And it plays an important role in energy levels, sex drive, keeping body fat content low, maintaining muscle and bone, and it also supports the adrenal glands. Then your DHEA levels could be low if you complain of foggy thinking, fatigue, memory loss, low libido. Low levels of DHEA are also associated with an increase of fractures, increased risk of fractures. And then testosterone. Testosterone's key, for so many things for both men and women. We do a lot of testosterone for women, and usually it's for the complaint of low libido, but its bone building effects are very well documented. And it can protect the brain, the breast, the heart, bones, joints. So it's important to remember that women need testosterone too, just in smaller doses than men. Testosterone plays a major role in depression and bone loss and low energy and libido when levels are low. And libido is one of the biggest complaints among women, but so many of them are not getting treated for it or offered any help. So when hormone levels decline, disease and age set in, you have the option to age gracefully, or have the option to live a higher quality of life for a longer period of time. By keeping hormone levels at optimal ranges, you can have less wrinkles, better bones, no hot flashes, a libido. You can keep your energy levels up and your mind sharp. So I know a lot of the people on here are already part of our program and are on hormones and have been tested, but I just wanted to briefly go over saliva testing, which is my preferred way of testing. Blood and urine are also acceptable. Saliva measures the free amount or the bioavailable portion of hormones that's not bound by proteins. So that fraction is only like 1 or 2%. So the saliva really picks up on, how much hormone you have available to use by your body. It's convenient. It's at-home test kit that's sent. And it also provides, which is different from most labs, you usually get, a range. And if you fall within that range, then everything's good. But with this, there's an optimal range, and you want to be in an optimal range. You want not just, your symptoms taken care of, but you want to be in the range that's protecting your heart and protecting your bones and your brain. If a woman is perimenopausal and she's still having periods, then she would need to test on a certain day of her cycle. But anyone who's, very irregular or menopausal, the test can be done on any day. And I did find a copy of one of my original saliva tests from years ago. 1 second here. My estradiol was very high. The progesterone was very low, and there was high testosterone. It's classic labs for the stage. Usually the estrogen isn't this high, but it's a great reason to always make sure that that your estrogen is balanced well with progesterone and that you're getting these labs done. Because if I hadn't tested, I never would have known that my estrogen was that high. I also noticed in here that my TSH was really high. It's 11, which is indicative of hypothyroidism. And it should be somewhere around 1, and it was 11. But I had decided previous to this test for months that I didn't notice a difference when I took my thyroid. So I decided not to take it anymore, and this is the result. So, the lesson would be, don't be like me, make sure you're compliant with what you take. And it can't 100% be about, remaining or residual symptoms. What the hormones are doing behind the scenes for your bones, your heart, and other systems are just as important. So I would suggest being consistent with your hormones and get regular yearly testing or adjustments if needed. This is a more typical lab result of a woman in perimenopause. These are actual labs from, people, clients here. Normal estradiol levels, usually they're pretty much like, right in the middle, somewhere there, maybe hovering a little bit high. Low progesterone, again, the biggest culprit in perimenopause. And then an elevated DHEA and testosterone. Which is pretty common also. We get ovarian surges of them, and they end up being high, and they tend to decrease, later on with estrogen in menopause. But you can see even here, well, I can't see. The estrogen is normal, the progesterone's low, but that ratio number's low because of that imbalance. So, they're not balanced well together, and the progesterone's low. So in order to raise the progesterone and raise the ratio, natural progesterone needs to be added there. And I just put these slides in last night because I wanted to just briefly touch on the adrenals and particularly adrenal fatigue, because the more people who are testing the adrenal profile and cortisol, the more that I see with adrenal fatigue, and it needs to be addressed and treated. It's a very underdiagnosed condition. Providers are not taught about it and are only, if they're looking at cortisol, they're looking for something like Addison's disease. But when the adrenal glands cannot keep pace with the demands on them, it produces a condition known as adrenal fatigue. And you can see again, these are actual, results of people who have tested with us. The normal cortisol starts high and then decreases throughout the day to a low point at night. And that's how it's supposed to look, like you're on a ski slope. Elevated cortisol, high cortisol can cause results in insomnia, anxiety, sugar cravings, feeling tired but wired, an increase in belly fat from high cortisol, and bone loss. And then when you look at the third one, this is adrenal fatigue. This is, that first dot there should be way up high, like around 6 or 7. And instead it's just flat. There is no slope. I mean, that person is in complete adrenal fatigue, and that can cause, most people, their fatigue levels are very, they hurt them, they keep them from doing things, and they have low energy, fatigue, food and sugar cravings, poor exercise tolerance or recovery, and low immune reserves. And so the onset of adrenal fatigue can be caused, after an extended period of stress or a severely stressful event. So it could be a chronic thing or acute, but, it's definitely related to some sort of stressful event. Could be after someone has driven themselves to exhaustion, overworked with little time for relaxation over an extended period of time, after extended or severe respiratory infections also. Most people with adrenal fatigue notice being less productive at work and home, in their relationships. They have low libido, miss promotions at work. They tend to make less money sometimes too if they have to, cut back on work. And these are some of the key signs and symptoms of adrenal fatigue. Decreased ability to handle stressful situations, less productive, hard to think clearly, lightheaded, always complains of being tired, lethargy. And there are aggravating factors to adrenal fatigue as well, such as, a constant life work stress or poor diet, unhappy relationships, a lack of exercise, not enough enjoyable activities in your life, or if you feel like you don't have control over how you spend your time. And I'm not going to go over treatment tonight for this because it's usually just, individualized, but herbs, certain vitamins are good for the adrenals, adaptogens, and lifestyle changes. But unless the adrenals are treated and healed, then they will always hold you back. And not fixing them also affect things like DHEA and testosterone. Those two hormones won't work as well for you when the adrenals are in fatigue. So I just wanted to give a little better direction for everyone about adrenal fatigue, or just the adrenals in general, in case you felt like an adrenal profile is something that you should be testing for yourself. And, you could read the sign. Again, these people often tend to be tired at 9 to 10, but, don't go to bed. And if they end up staying up to 11, they often get that second wind and stay up between 1 and 2 a.m. They want to sleep in late in the morning. They're most rested between 7 and 9 a.m. and often get their best work done late at night or early morning. 7, dwarfs of menopause: itchy bitchy, sweaty, sleepy, bloated, forgetful, and psycho. I think the late Suzanne Summers had kind of her own version of that, but I just think it's cute. And then So, I wanted to do this webinar. I know it's a lot of information and we could repeat or go over anything in the Q&A. But I wanted to do this webinar because the education piece of it is so important for me. Um, there's so much misinformation out there on hormones, or just simply like a lack of accurate information. And I find that women tend to be their own best advocates. So I hope this helped in that struggle. In case someone is new and was invited to learn more, I'll touch quickly on how our women's health program works. Um, and all this can also be found on the Birds Hill Pharmacy website, which I'll have on the next slide. And then we'll open up for the Q&A. So, with our women's health program, you can schedule your own introductory call right from the website. We will go over your symptoms, your history, even your goals, what goals you have for your hormonal health. We'll decide what testing is best for you or that you want. You'll get your test kits, you mail that out when the results are in. We do another phone call, which is a consultation call. And that call is where we review your test results and come up with the right plan for you. And then that will be approved by your provider. So I write up a letter of recommendation, send them your test results, an order form that's all filled out. So once that gets approved, it gets sent to Birds Hill Compounding Pharmacy. And that's just a short turnaround, and they mail out your hormones that are customized for you. And then you can start your hormones. And, it's a good idea I like people to keep in touch with me. It doesn't bother me to message me because it's better to kind of talk through things. So it's not uncommon to have to adjust your hormones. It might not be perfect at first. So, keep the conversation open. And then, if you're feeling good, I believe that, testing once a year is a good idea. And then so also, again, if you're new here and would like to schedule your introductory appointment, you can do that at birdshillpharmacy.com under the consultation services tab, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. Any existing clients who would like to retest or have personal questions, you could always reach me on the Practice Better app. And I did want to say this because I was really excited about this when I found out that Dr. Deborah Peabody has sat through this webinar tonight, most likely to support me as she's done for so many years now. She is an amazing physician. She's a champion for all. She's a women's health promoter, and I very much love her and consider her a dear friend and colleague. So she's graciously agreed to be part of the Q&A also with me. So if you have any questions you would like to ask her, or just to get a physician's perspective, she's here for you. And we can open up the QA anytime, Chris.
Oh, I'm on mute. Sorry about that, Tanya. That was fantastic. Thank you. I think I echo everyone's sentiment saying that was great. For Q&A, we just have in the chat one real question here is when you're approved by, and we can open up questions if you want to unmute as well after, but when you're approved by provider, who is that provider? Question and our PCP question mark.
Yeah, so it's either your PCP, some people go through, they're more like women's health, so whether it's an OBGYN or a midwife, it could be your PCP. We also have, a lot of recommendations, like if your physician isn't on board or, doesn't know a lot about or isn't comfortable. We've worked with enough people that, it's usually not a problem for someone to be able to have access to the hormones.
Awesome. Next question we have here is what is the recommendation long-term for women who do very well on estrogen only, but are intolerant of all progesterone, including their own endogenous progesterone, to achieve protective effects of progesterone without the negative side effects?
Is there hysterectomy or no? Can people be unmuted so that?
Courtney, if you want to unmute. No, answer was no.
No hysterectomy. that's hard. Yeah. So, I would say we would try to troubleshoot if you haven't tried everything: topical, vaginal progesterone, oral progesterone. If your estrogen is just vaginal, that's fine. You don't need the progesterone to oppose it. But if you're using it as a supplement, raising levels, um, you really need some sort of progesterone there if you haven't had a hysterectomy. Even if it had to be synthetic.
The next question, um, can you show the first adrenal fatigue slide again? I've made many positive changes, but the fatigue is still an ongoing concern I'm discussing with my PCP.
This is the first one.
And she said, sorry, the first one with the bullet points. Think that should this help? I assume that's what you're asking on that question. Okay, cool. All right. Are bioidentical hormones safe for individuals with a history of atypical ductal hyperplasia treated with tamoxifen for 5 years and a family history of breast cancer? This is a great question.
Yeah, I'd like to bring Deb onto this one.
Yeah.
If you're
So
related
that is a
to
great
Sharon.
question, and one that I often hear. And what I would say about that is take a good hard look at your symptoms, because if you're experiencing, menopausal symptoms that are causing your quality of life that is so debilitating, you have to weigh the risk versus the benefits. So I would take a hard look at your lifestyle. I would take a hard look at just your hormone levels. I can tell you anecdotally, I've had a number of patients who've had various types of breast cancers, who have been on hormones with the blessing of their oncologists. The oncologists are taking a hard look at this too, because again, we're looking at, one of the nice things about bioidenticals is you can do a low dose, you can adjust it accordingly. But I think, obviously, if there are certain things in your symptoms that maybe could be managed outside of hormones, or, we have to look at that. And again, it's the risk versus the benefits of these. But again, if you're debilitated from your menopausal symptoms, then that's going to cause increased stress and fatigue, which would then ultimately potentially lead towards, cancer, because that's another thing. If your things are all unbalanced, then, you have the risk, certainly have a risk for disease. So.
Great question so far. Thank you. Any other questions?
Can we verbally just ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Lynn?
Yes, I haven't been tested in a while. You were saying, Tanya, that you can get it from conversation, or, maybe I should be tested. And this adrenal fatigue, how are you certain that it is true adrenal fatigue? That seems to be my clock. I go to bed a little bit later and I get up a little later.
Yeah, I actually kind of follow that too. Yeah, when I was reading, I think, well, that's me. But I've had my adrenals done, and they were fine, and they followed the perfect pattern. So I think the thing to do would be to test and see,
Yeah.
And also, if you're if you haven't been tested and it's been more than a year, it's probably wise to retest as opposed to just having a conversation about symptoms, get the labs and then we'll discuss,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I
Tanya?
think I missed a question or two
Yeah.
here. Well, we're not discussing men this evening,
Yeah,
but
it's
I mean,
just-
Tanya, if you're open to a question on that.
Sure.
All right. Can men diagnosed with macular degeneration take estrogen to slow progression?
Good question. Do you know, Deb?
I would have to, I know that when I test men for their testosterone levels, I'm also testing their estrogen levels to see where it falls. I would have to look that up. My gut tells me yes, it probably does. But I'd have to look at the studies to say that
And
for
they
sure.
would have to at least have them checked because a lot of men will have elevated testosterone, whereas that makes women feel great. For men, it's more like part of their andropause where it doesn't make them feel great. So they may already have elevated levels of estrogen and not need supplementation. But yeah, I really don't know about supplementing for men with that. I don't know. Research it. I guess we'll have to research it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then I had another question. Can someone out of state work with you? That is, yeah, that is a big yes. The entire Northeast and a couple other states. Jen, I'm not sure where you're located. Maybe Maine, maybe New Hampshire, maybe
I'm
Massachusetts.
actually, I'm in Florida. And my
Florida,
sister
yes.
is on this call, Wendy, and she does live in Maine, and that's why I'm on this call. But I just wondered, I've had a lot of blood tests and stuff done, and I'm on some bioidenticals, but I just wondered, I've never done a saliva test, and maybe my doctor would do it or not. But if this is something you normally do, maybe it'd be something I could connect with you on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can do the testing with you and we can, I can make the recommendation to your provider for sure. But, I forget how many states there are, but there's quite a number of states that, Birds Hill and Johnson Compounding is licensed in. So if it's like Florida and they're not licensed, or if they are, you know, you just have to
We are.
find, you are, okay, so Florida is fine then. If it was someplace like California, then we could still do, all of the preliminary work, but the compounded product would have to be at a pharmacy in their state.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Sorry about missing that question. I got a bunch at once and yours got pushed up. Sorry about that.
All good. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, if anyone wants to come up mute and ask any more questions, we have a few more minutes. If not, we'll wrap it up.
Can you be on it indefinitely?
You can. The best thing to do is the most ideal situation would be when you need estrogen, that's when you go on it. So when you're in menopause, like that first year, get on estrogen. You can be on it for the rest of your life. It will be preventative for so many things that we discuss. It's people who are, wait maybe 10 years or more outside of menopause that then want to introduce estrogen into an already deficient system where maybe they have already developed some plaque. There's data that shows that you won't get that benefit for the heart, or even for something like the brain against dementia, or you may be may have a little slightly higher risk by introducing it late. But if you started out with estrogen within that first 10 years, then you can continue it just like forever, as far as
I see.
for, anti-aging type, prevention.
Yeah, I think I probably started it within the 10 years. The information, I mean, there's so much information that's so wonderful. And my family has a real history of Alzheimer's and dementia, and that was really uplifting to hear that.
Yeah. I can send you to Lynn. There was a really small study done, and it was showed really great outcomes in actually reversing Alzheimer's. And it's a whole list of things that everybody should be doing. And on that list was, hormones, but maybe you can take a look at that list and see if anything else, you could implement, to help prevent that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Tanya,
especially
this is
looking at
Shannon.
ways to reduce inflammation. So there's a lot of good studies out there to support. I too come from a family with Alzheimer's, and I'm always looking at the things that will really help. And certainly balancing hormones, reducing stress, and reducing inflammation are key pieces of that.
Yeah. You mean like through your diet and
Right, diet and also some supplements and exercise and sleep, and there's a whole list of things. I'm trying to remember,
We do a compound called low dose naltrexone, as well as there's great studies for lion's mane for brain health. So those two, I would definitely do a little research on that if you're interested in learning more.
yeah, I've heard of the lion's mane, but it's like so many things, you don't know how much to take.
Yep. All right.
I have
So-
just
and then-
one comment. I want, actually a couple of comments. One is kind of in the lines, Gary, Tanya and I have been working together for 20+ years on women's health. And I want to say with this move to Bird's Health Pharmacy and Johnson Compounding, that has been a game changer. I mean, you guys just really know what you're doing. And I love being, I mean, I call Tanya all the time, what do you think about this? But to be able to have access to your wonderful pharmacists about all kinds of different things and supplements and what's compounded for certain conditions, it's wonderful. So as a provider working with you guys, it's been great. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. And we feel equally as fortunate to have Tanya on the team and a partner provider, as well as yourself working with you. And to echo Dr. Peabody's sentiments, yeah, we're always available to help answer questions at the pharmacy. When you become a patient, we want to be an extension of our providers' practices in the truest way to make sure that you are comfortable with the therapies, the medications, and all that. Compounding can be new for a lot of our patients, and we want to make that as seamless as possible. And you're always in great hands with Tanya as well. So, John is on here. If you want to chime in at all, he's one of the partner owners of the pharmacy. And by the way, it says Gary for me, but I'm actually using I'm Chris, but I'm using Gary's account. So sorry for the confusion about that.
And we appreciate all your knowledge.
Thank you. John, did you want to chime in and say hello real quick? Maybe
No, just say hello to everyone. I don't want to overshadow. I'll let you guys keep going. We do a lot
Okay,
with the
cool.
lion's mane. Those lion's mane, usually we dose that as 500 milligrams to 2 grams daily, depending. And then the synapse nasal spray is great for some of that brain fog and things like that too. But yeah, no, I'll let you guys continue.
All right, cool. Thanks, John. All right, any other questions? And we're about at time. This has been a blast and really excited for the attendance and fantastic presentation. And thank you, Dr. Peabody, for your surprise guest appearance and chiming in. That's been awesome. All right, we will sign off. Everybody have a great evening and thank you so much.
Thank you so
Take care.
much.
All right.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.